Alright, welcome back to another video. It is the year of 2024 and I recorded this way too late because I should have recorded this yesterday. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about my top 10 movies of 2023. Now, I watched way more movies than I played video games this year. Of course, but um, even in past years I've watched more movies this year than I have I watched more movies this year than I have in past years. Is how I'm supposed to phrase that, right? I watched a combined total of 51 movies. 51 of them, which I think is good. I saw a lot of movies this year. A lot of them inspired me. A lot of them didn't. But yeah, before we get to the top 10, I want to shout out some honorable mentions, like movies that just didn't make the cut, but I still absolutely love them. And those would be Gran Turismo, Scream 6, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, Air, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, Missing, Super Mario Bros. Movie, Dungeons and Dragons, Wonka, Barbie, The Color Purple, and Demona. All of those movies I really adored. Not adored, but like I thought were really good, but just weren't quite enough to make the top 10 list. Let's get started. Alright, starting out at number 10, we have Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I thoroughly love this movie. I enjoyed this movie a lot. I think that it's the best Marvel movie, it's the best MCU movie that they've put out in such a long time. And not because it's, the best MCU, machine processing movie that they put out. It's like an actual movie, right? It's an actual movie made by an actual human being, and James Gunn. And I think that what James Gunn brings to, once again, his version of Guardians, it feels like a movie that was written, back when the MCU was in its prime, and that's because it was. But this feels like a MCU movie 5-6 years ago, right? Back when the MCU was, king of the world, when it was in this prime, where each movie was making like $1 billion, stuff like that. This feels like that era of MCU, and that's what I love, because that era of MCU was the best. It has everything you want out of a movie. It has pretty good visuals, has really good character development, has really good action, and has an emotional story. And I think that's everything that I want out of an MCU movie at this point, right? All of that stuff, all the things that make a good movie, right? Now, of course, there are there's movies that I would just consider to be fun times at the movies, like the comic book movies in general. Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is one of those movies. It's not objectively better than any of the movies that I listed in the honorable mentions, not at all. But it's still a fun time in the movie theater, and that's what I absolutely loved about it. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was a fun time in the theater, plus all the other things that I mentioned, and that's why I love this movie. James Gunn can make me cry at a CGI raccoon. It's crazy, and because of that, I'm very excited to see what he does with Superman. Because if he can make me cry with Rocket Raccoon, then Lord knows what he could do with Superman. I'm very excited to see his take on it, because he seems like he's having a lot of fun with it, and he seems like an avid Superman fan, and I'm very excited to see that. Alright, number 9 is a very weird one. This movie is one massive trigger warning, and that's May December. I feel like it's really hard to praise this movie, right? Because of the contents of the movie is really weird. It's one massive trigger warning, is what I'll say. Do not go in, like, if you God, how do I explain this movie? If you are sensitive to anything like not like God, man, if you don't want hearing anything about sexual assault or even pedophilia, stuff like that, don't watch this movie. Okay, that's what I definitely could have worded that better, but that's the best I got at the top of my head, right? Don't watch this movie. It's essentially one giant trigger warning. But the thing that I absolutely love about this movie is the fact that it's taking this one character, who's one actress, who's looking into another actress's life, not via internet research or tabloids, and because of that, uncovering stuff online and stuff like that, but it's actually by visit, because they're going to make a movie about her. It's actively by visiting and seeing what happened, like talking to the people and talking to them about what happened and seeing if they are, if they were malicious intent or not, is very interesting look into the mind of somebody who has done horribly wrong, right? And years later doesn't really think they've done bad. It's really crazy. The movie has a lot of twists and turns that I really weren't expecting. And last thing, right? This movie's music, right? This music, the movie's music, a lot of it does sound the same. However, I have to give props to May December for having like my second favorite OST of the year, my second favorite original score of the year. Think of video games terms, because it's simple, but it's also really haunting. It's like every time like a twist or turn or something like that happens, that music, that piano starts playing, and it's very haunting. It's very scary for a movie that's not supposed to be scary. Scary in the aspect of like normal horror movies. It's supposed to be scary in other aspects, but not like normal horror movies. And so it throws you off, but it's still uneasy and unnerving, and that's what I absolutely love about this movie. That's what stood out to me most, the music. But overall, the movie is great. Once again, like I said, one giant trigger warning. So don't watch it if you don't want to. I completely understand, but I still think that May December is a great movie overall. Number 8. The next 3 spots are going to be my hot take of the video. Number 8. Yeah, this one's going to be low. We have Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Listen, right? I absolutely love this movie. I really did. I think this movie, for the most part, right? This movie, for the most part, is perfect up until the last 30 minutes. And I think that's what kills the movie for me, right? The last 30 minutes of the movie. Not because it ends off with a cliffhanger, right? There is another movie higher up on this list that ends off with a bigger cliffhanger, not even a bigger cliffhanger, but ends off with a cliffhanger just like this one, right? But the thing about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse that kind of throws me off a lot, it kind of pushes it down here the more I think about it, is that the last 30 minutes of the movie feels weird to say, because there's like when I was watching the movie, there are like 5 different ending spots that I thought could happen. These big wide shots, like you see these big wide shots, as well as the music starts swelling, and you're like, oh, the movie's gonna end here, and it keeps going for another 10 minutes. So you're like, I just disagree, right? It would be the perfect moment to end. And yeah, the ending cliffhanger is really cool. It was really surprising and all that stuff. But I think that the fact that it took 30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes of I thought the movie was gonna end, is very, very. This is very nitpicky of me, by the way. But it didn't feel right to me. It felt weird, as well as I'm all for cliffhangers, right? I think one of my favorite cliffhangers ever, at least in a movie, off the top of my head I can remember, is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. I think that does it really well. Same thing with another movie of this list. I think that does it really well. But the thing about Spider-Verse is that Spider-Verse felt abrupt. It felt like they just kind of cut it in the middle and called it a day. Not, giving the story that was properly set up, a decent enough ending that also leaves things open for the next movie, right? Spider-Verse felt like it was just cut in half. It was a movie that was cut in half, and that's why I just didn't really enjoy it, because it doesn't really have a conclusion. I like something like I can't say it because it's higher up on the list, but when I get there, it doesn't feel like it has a proper ending that concludes this part of the story. It's just like one continuous movie that they cut in half, and that's what I don't really like about Spider-Verse. But yeah, Across the Spider-Verse overall, outside of that, it's still a phenomenal movie. I think the movie is great. It's just the last 30 minutes that kills it for me. But evidently, the movie still made the top 10, so I still really, really enjoyed it. Number 7. I almost said 8 yet. Number 7. Now, I praise this movie a lot. I do. I absolutely adore this movie. I put it above Spider-Verse for a reason, right? I love this movie, and it's something that I am not ashamed to say I love. and that is DC's Blue Beetle. All right, listen, hear me out on this one, okay? I love this movie. I do. Normally hitting my mic. I love this movie. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Blue Beetle is a character that I have been interested in, and a character that I thoroughly enjoy reading and watching on screen for the longest time. And the fact to see this character that I have known for the longest time get a movie for the first time and introduced to actual audiences, I understand how comic book fans now feel now, right? I understand how comic book fans feel now when like the character that nobody knows about gets introduced to, you know, the entire world, like the character you absolutely love. That was Blue Beetle for me, right? And the movie is painfully average, but right, a lot of this movie is just echoing, you know, Iron Man and Ant-Man, like, you know, story points. But I think a lot of what carried this movie for me is the cast. Obviously, the visuals are great too. The visuals are phenomenal for a DC movie made in, or a live action comic book movie made in 2023 in general. Visuals are great, but it's the cast, right? The cast really do make this movie. The cast, even outside of Shalomar Dueña as Blue Beetle, like just the rest of the cast, right? They make you want to keep watching and make you emotionally invested in what's happening. There's a certain point, maybe halfway, a bit more halfway in the movie, that is so heartbreaking because you've grown to love all these characters already by this point. And, you know, to see what happens, it genuinely is heartbreaking. But, you know, seeing all these characters band together and come together to try and save Jaime at the end is so uplifting and inspiring. And because, you know, I'm not in the greatest position with my family at the moment, seeing this family made me a bit envious, but also made me happy. Like, you know, maybe things can go back to what they were at some point, or maybe things can get better. And I think that's what I love about Blue Beetle. Any movie that can resonate with me emotionally, for one reason or another, I automatically say this is a really good movie. This is one of my favorite movies, right? And that's what Blue Beetle did. Blue Beetle just resonated with me a lot, in ways that, you know, most people wouldn't understand. But it's still a movie that I absolutely adore. Also, those last two fight scenes were phenomenal, absolutely amazing. Love that. More of that, please. Alright, number 6. Here's the hot take. Here's the biggest hot take of them all. Number 6 is The Flash, right? When I said movies that resonate with me, I really meant movies that resonated with me with one reason or another, right? Listen, I love The Flash. Do I think that the CG is wonky and like the whole dead actor cameo thing is bad? Yes, I do. It's not good. It just really isn't. But I think the thing about The Flash that I love and that appeals to me is because it came out at the worst and yet best time for me, right? Because, you know, the story is about Barry and trying to make up lost time with his mom, you could per se. Not necessarily, but you know, going back in time and trying to erase that so he could have more time with his mom, and just it echoes like somebody who had their parents and all that taken away too early. That their parents' love were taken away from them too early in life, and just somebody who yearns for that, who wants that over the next. God, however long they live out their life. And that's something I can relate to because, you know, had a similar thing happen to me in 2022. One of my parents had not a freak accident, but it was a, how do I say it, medical emergency, you could say, medical emergency, and 1 year later they died because of it. One of my parents died because of it, and it was the worst pain I feel in my life, and that's because, and so that's why I can relate to Barry Allen a bit more, right? I can relate to The Flash a bit more than a lot of other people did. Like, I saw this movie for the first time, it echoed a lot of what I felt at this very important time, but by that point, they just hadn't died yet. But, you know, a month after this movie came out, that parent in question passed away, and I rewatched this movie, and it hit even harder than it did before because that had happened. And that's a lot of the reason why I just really enjoyed this movie. It resonated with me so much that I just couldn't, couldn't bring myself to hate it. Throughout all of its flaws, I couldn't bring myself to hate it because I resonated and, felt emotionally connected. And that's why it's here. Stoppy talk now. That's why it's here. I still really enjoyed this movie. Alright, getting into the top 5. Number 5 is John Wick Chapter 4. Now, I'm going to try my hardest not to spend too much time on some of these movies, right? John Wick Chapter 4 is realistically just a really good time. Up until the end. Up until the end, that's what it feels like. That's what it feels like, a heartbreaking story, and a deserved finale for this movie. And this franchise, right? Up until the end, right? If everything just, when you get to the end and reflect on the entire thing that you've just witnessed, right? Everything feels deserved. The action is there. The sets are phenomenal, The fact that you can have modern technology with, old school style action and sets with like neon lights and a whole bunch of water and just randomly in the streets and stuff, and even the stair scene, the fact that you could do that is so compelling. Not compelling, but like so amazing to me. And it's just everything about John Wick is essentially why I love action movies. I think action movies are some of the best type of movies. And John Wick really does prove that. It really does. And it's essentially bringing back the modern action, the old school action movie with a modern twist. And that's why I absolutely love John Wick. Which is why it's at number 5. Number 4 is the other movie with the cliffhanger on this list. The movie I was talking about earlier. Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. This movie is great. I'm gonna be completely honest. Hadn't seen fully seen a Mission Impossible movie before this year. But before Dead Reckoning came out, I binged all of them. Absolutely adored Ghost Protocol. Really enjoyed Fallout. The rest were kind of fine to me. Fine to good. And 2 is just bad. But Dead Reckoning Part 1 is my favorite one. For a lot of reasons. It's the stakes it has. The characters are, because you've grown to know these characters over 8 movies at this point, right? Or actually 7. But the characters are at their best. This is the best you've seen some of these characters. The villains are phenomenal. The music during some of those sequences is amazing. The sequences in general, the whole train thing. Of course, we all know the motorcycle, but even Ethan Hunt running through, can't remember which city it was, to save Ilsa was just such a tense and emotionally charged scene that I can't help but absolutely love this movie. And this movie does cliffhangers right. I'm shocked, I know. This movie does cliffhangers right, because even though it's a cliffhanger, it feels like, the story and what they were setting up ended, and now we could take what we have here, we could take our cliffhanger here, where we set even more stuff that we set up in the movie and carry it on to the next part of the movie. Like, yes, this basic approach, this basic setup of what we were setting up for this movie, it ends at this movie, right? We have the thing that we were looking for now. The main villain is out of the picture for a little bit. We have everything that we're looking for. Now we take this and move on to the next movie, right? That's what I absolutely love about this cliffhanger. It actually feels like a proper conclusion to the movie without actually being a proper conclusion to the movie, and that's the best thing I could ask for out of a cliffhanger, which is why I absolutely love this movie and think that this cliffhanger is just better, right? And this cliffhanger is how you do it. This is how you do it, and this is how you do a just how you do a movie in general. It's amazing. Our top three. All right, I kind of had my top three set in stone. Originally, my top three consisted of Mission Impossible. Then I saw a certain movie that we'll get to in a moment. But number three, Past Lives. I'm not gonna touch up on this movie too much. Realistically, it's just a go watch it kind of situation. Past Lives hurt. The movie did hurt. The movie hurt a lot. I think a lot of that is because you see these two characters that were very close at a young age grow apart and then reconnect or rekindle their relationship and then grow apart again. And when you're rooting for them both to, you know, get together and, you know, be a couple and be happy in life, it just rips that away from you. And that's why I just love this movie. It's once again very emotional, a bit more emotional than I was expecting, and just the little intricacies of the dialogue and what's said and the emotions portrayed in this movie, and how it's told. Like, you know, half of the movie is spoken in Korean and half of it isn't, and I think a lot of that is just speaks volumes of what new directors and writers and people that write original movies can do. Like how original movies can, you know, succeed if all the proper care and proper time and effort is put into it. Unlike something like The Creator or Rebel Moon, right? Original movies can succeed, and they could be great. And Past Lives shows that. Past Lives is absolutely one of my favorite movies of the year because of that. Number two, all right. Definitely wasn't expecting this movie to be on this list like 4 weeks ago, but it is. Number two is Godzilla -1. Man, this movie was great. This movie was great. It's just a human drama, right? I love human dramas. I just love dramas in general, right? But it's just a human drama that it explores, you know, survivor's guilt, you could say, but as well as post World War II and how people were feeling, how the state Japan was in, and just the mind of a soldier and the PTSD that they were going through, that they had to suffer with. It's all that. It's just a human drama, but with the added Godzilla on there, right? And it's one of those things where, for once, you're actually rooting against Godzilla, right? Like, all the American movies recently have been like just rooting against Godzilla, right? I've been rooting for Godzilla, but this movie makes you root against Godzilla. Like, every time he tries to do his atomic breath, or he turns around and he's like picking up stuff, it's like, Godzilla, please stop, I don't like it, because you're gonna kill the characters that I care about. Normally you don't care if he kills characters, but this one is like, don't kill the characters. I really like this character. They have a lot to live for, and I think if a Godzilla movie can write characters phenomenally well, and also have Godzilla do what Godzilla does best, and it look amazing as well. Like, this movie's got a $15 million budget, by the way. But if you can do all that, have the movie look amazing, then it's going to be a phenomenal movie. And the fact that it made it this high, and it made it this high for a lot of other people, and it's such a surprising movie for a lot of other people, means that, you know, Godzilla -1, they did something right, and they need to stick with it. They need to stick with doing great, right? And I just, this is unironically a perfect movie. This is a perfect movie. There's nothing bad I can say about it. It is a perfect movie. And lastly, number one, because of course it is number one, my favorite movie of the year, Oppenheimer. What more about this movie needs to be said, right? Like, what could be said about this movie that hasn't been said before? The score is masterful. The cast is like just some of their best performances that you will see out of, you know, the individual cast members. Some of their best performances: Cillian Murphy, Robert Downey Jr., the people like that. Just like some of their best performances ever. just the story and how it's approached, and like the telling Oppenheimer's life, not from a subjective view, but like from like a objective view, right? He's saying like, yeah, bombs are bad, and this is how it affected Oppenheimer himself, right? And how all of that just kind of um, led to the man who kind of who he led to the person that as the maker of the atomic bomb, and it led to how it not horribly, but like it terribly affected him going forward, right? How the bombs and making the bombs terribly affected him going forward. And not to mention that it's just a visually stunning movie. It's a beautiful movie. Christopher Nolan knocked it out of the park. Like I said, there's not much about this movie that really needs to be said other than it is like a 10 out of 10 masterpiece for me. It's my favorite Nolan movie, just above The Prestige, because I absolutely adore that movie. But yeah, highly would recommend you go see Oppenheimer when you get the chance. It's coming back to theaters, I think, next week or something like that. So there you go. That's your chance to go see Oppenheimer. The movie is absolutely great. Absolutely love it. And it is my favorite movie of the year. And that's it. Now, of course, there's some movies that I just didn't get to see this year. I unfortunately did not get the chance to watch Poor Things or Killers of the Flower Moon. Poor Things just because I didn't know how to watch it. I didn't have a way to watch it, so I was like, I'll just leave it alone at this point, right? And then Killers of the Flower Moon was just a fortunate victim of I didn't have enough time to go watch it, and when I did have time, the movie is like $20 to rent at the very least. I'm like, nah, I'm good. I disagree. I like movies, but I'm not going to spend like $20 on something that will easily be less to spend in the future, right? Or you just get Apple TV for 1 month and buy it there. But yeah, movies like that I didn't get to see. Same thing with Saltburn. I don't know how people feel about that movie. Just didn't get to watch it. I know people were weird about it, but didn't get to watch it. Also because I got scared to watch it, but I didn't get to watch it. But yeah, that's my list of my favorite movies of the year. Let me know what you think, and let me know what your favorite movies of the year are. Thank you for watching. It's been a really good year for movies. I hope, and even besides the whole writers and actor strike thing, which did kind of affect me a bit more than I thought it would. I hope 2024 and 2025 are even better years for movies. I can't wait to see what's in store for us. See you next time. Goodbye.